Please take a moment to listen to this disclosure from the Common Ground podcast. The Common Ground podcast is dedicated to exploring commonality among individuals with diverse perspectives. Our guests may present unique worldviews related to health, psychology, and overall well-being. Please note that the Common Ground podcast does not directly promote or endorse any specific ideas, concepts, or actions discussed during our episodes. Listeners are encouraged to approach the information shared with discernment and to consult with their mental and/or physical health providers before making any changes to their health or wellness practices. The views expressed by guests and hosts are their own and do not directly reflect the opinions of the Common Ground podcast. Your well-being is important, and we advocate for informed decision-making. Thanks for listening.
It has been taught to women that they are the gender of nurture. Changing the diapers, feeding the baby, dressing the kids, taking them to the doctor, that is all a part of the gender role. And I have had that with both of my co-parents, right? And so when we have lived with that kind of culture for a long time, it's not just personal issues and hurt that are determining the way we co-parent, it's also gender culture. What I have seen, which is a positive, very positive sign, in a few of the younger men, I have seen them taking on the gender roles of physical care, which was assigned to the mom.
I try to warn parents, if all you do is badmouth the other parent, when that child grows up, and if they one day actually get to know that co-parent which you've destroyed, and they find out they're not everything that you just made them out to be, guess who they're going to get angry at? Guess who they're going to come back to and not want a relationship because you stole a relationship from them. Don't ever do that to your kids.
So it makes me very grateful for the co-parenting relationship I have with my daughter's dad, because we've never once been to court. I've never once asked him for $1. He's never once asked me for $1. Like, we always just do what is best for our kiddo. And he's over at my house every holiday, and we buy him gifts, and he buys us and her brother that I have with my husband. Like, it's just like he's part of our family, and that's how it's supposed to be, because even though him and I don't work out, we share flesh and blood, and he is my family, and he knows that I would do anything for him. And yes, the relationship looks different, but I just wish that people would stop being so selfish with these precious little people that don't deserve this start to life. We don't need to rock their relationship. Life brings enough trauma, okay? Like, don't complicate it.
Welcome to the Common Ground podcast, where stories connect, perspectives collide, and purpose is found in the middle.
Every week, we sit down with unique and inspiring guests that come from all walks of life. People who challenge the status quo, overcome the odds, and live with intentionality.
Whether you're driving to work, on your morning walk, or just looking for that spark to ignite your week, you're in the right place.
Welcome to the Common Ground podcast with your hosts, John Fletcher and Sydney Curtin.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Common Ground podcast. That's right. It is your boy, Philly, as always, here for another awesome episode. And as always, I have the lovely, the amazing, the fantastic, you know her. That's right. Give it up for Sydney.
Hey, John, how's it going?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. Today's going to be, I think, a really great episode, but something really cool, happened this weekend, and I just want to tell you about it real quick. I came across an ATM that only gives out coins, and I couldn't believe it, but that there was no line. And I don't understand why not everybody was there, because it all makes sense.
Very good.
Yes. You can let us know below. Give that rating of a 1 to 10 on that dad joke. Awesome, and we're privileged today to have our guest today. Today's guest is a powerful voice of resilience, faith, and transformation for women navigating one of life's hardest seasons, divorce and co-parenting. Please welcome Clover Johnston, a faith-filled co-parenting coach, mother of 3 adult daughters, and the founder of the Co-Parent Accelerator Transformation Program. Clover's journey began in the most unimaginable way. Abandoned by her husband just weeks after giving birth to her second daughter. In the immediate aftermath of a catastrophic hurricane, left initially without financial or emotional support, she faced an overwhelming reality, but chose healing over bitterness, faith over fear, and agency over victimhood. Now Clover helps women who are co-parenting with emotional, unavailable partners, especially those grieving a marriage that ended without validation or closure. Her work gives voice to ambiguous and disenfranchised grief, while offering both emotional healing and practical tools. Clover's motto says it all. It's hard to be fruitful when you're holding on to what's hurtful. And today she's here to help release the pain and step into power. Welcome to the Common Ground podcast, Ms. Clover Johnston.
Thanks so much for being here.
I'm delighted to be here.
I really love what you said in your catchphrase, if you will. You cannot be fruitful while you're holding on to the things that have been hurtful in your life. And that really resonates with me. It's been something that I am living out right now. So I'm really excited to get into that. But for those who don't know you, you're a coach, a mom of 3, and you're really well traveled too. Can you give me just a little bit of background about where you're from, where you live now, and what you do?
Okay, so I am Jamaican, and much of my co-parenting life took place in Jamaica. As a friend of mine, I'm going to use this phrase. He says I'm a citizen of the world because I'm not resident in any place at this moment in time. But yes, I have traveled for work to China. I spent 5 years out there. I studied in the UK for 5 years. And I'm back and forth from North America to Jamaica. But I think in the last 20 years, I've probably spent more time as a non-resident of Jamaica than I have been a resident. And in addition to being a co-parenting coach and what I consider to be a tribe leader of one of the largest demographics of single and divorced moms, I'm also still a part-time educator.
Very nice. And what part-time educator, do you have a specific age that you do education, or is it tutoring? What do you do?
Okay, so my background is really as a communication specialist, but I have also been in the area of English language communication, especially ESL.
Okay, awesome. So, and going into some of the specifics more of our topic today, which is co-parenting, John and I love talking about that. John and I both co-parent, and it's something that for a lot of families is no longer a backup plan. For a lot of people now, it just is the plan. So what led you to living through this co-parenting journey, not once, but twice? And what were the defining moments for you that really shaped your desire to know this is a need in society and become a coach and advocate so that people know how to speak for themselves when it comes to co-parenting?
Okay, well, I am not sure at what point I learned the word co-parenting. And I still have shifting narratives around this description of shared parenting, because I want to put this up front. Co-parenting is not synonymous with shared parenting. How I got here. So I had a very grueling road with what I called low to no co-parenting. And the lens and frame of that I look through now, I would say we assume when we say co-parenting that it is shared, but it is not. So let me just give an example of the co-parenting as I know it. So the kid is sick, and I may tell the dad, and he'll phone to find out how did the doctor's visit go, what was the prescription, what did the doctor's diagnosis say, and when will the kid be better. Shared parenting means, okay, if you are the custodial parent, can I come with you to the doctor? Or if you have to go to work, can I be there for the consultation? and you go off to work. I will get the prescription and I will go home with this child. When you're done work, you can pick him or pick her up. That is shared, right? Co-parenting is the one where, oh, I'm checking in to see what's happening. So I've come from that lens of low to no co-parenting, and my narrative is moving into where the trajectory should be, right? Since it's a new model, that's where we need to actually go, where each parent is 100% invested emotionally, physically, and roles are interchangeable as long as there's availability, right? So that's an important distinction I want to make upfront, that I have come to that conclusion based on my own experience. So let's get into my personal experience. So my marriage ended or started to unravel, let's put it that way, when my eldest daughter, because I had two at the time, was 4 years old, just about to go to kindergarten, and the other one was 5 weeks old. As I said, there was a hurricane. And if there ever was a catastrophic national disaster, then I could extrapolate that to my own emotional journey subsequently. So the hurricane damaged the roof and we just couldn't stay there. And at the time, electricity was off. The phone services were down because we were mostly using landlines at that time. And so when I watched water pouring through the roof as the winds, 100 and probably 80 miles an hour wind speed, peeled off the roof, I was holding my 5-week-old baby. Luckily, I had community and friends. So my neighbor, and this happened in the daytime, fortunately, so she said, come and hang out with us for the night. So I was able to spend the night, myself and the kids. My mom was still with me, and my mom housed with another friend, and my ex-husband, he hung around in the house until morning. So when morning came and, the magnitude hit you of what has just happened. 2 young children, one should be off to kindergarten in a week. You have no roof. A lot of stuff has been destroyed by the water. Luckily for me, I'm on maternity leave, so I didn't have to think about my work situation. So within a few days, I was with another relative. Had to wait until we could make contact with my mom and dad. And so after about 3 days, roads were now passable and they were able to come into Kingston to get us. But I distinctly remember this utterance from my now ex-husband. When I went to my cousins where we spent those 3 days, nights, I said to him when he dropped us off with, just thinking, well, I guess he's going to be hanging out here with us. So I realized he wasn't. So I said, so where are you going then? And he said, where I'm going, you can come. That meaning me and my two infants. So I can laugh about it now, but it was absolutely emotionally piercing. It was gut-wrenching at that time. So moved to my mom's house and I spent almost 2.5 months there. Because this happened in the September, I was there until about mid-November. Now, approximately 10 days after the hurricane, my 5-week-old developed throat ulcers. And I discovered this because she just stopped swallowing. She was being breastfed. And I was just all in panic. I had had no contact with my ex-husband. I mean, phones were again working, albeit, they may have been touch and go, but they were not working. So my now deceased brother, who had children in my own age group, said, okay, I'm taking you to my pediatrician. And so he did, and he diagnosed those throat ulcers and then said to me, I said, so what's your prescription? And he said, oh, you just have to live through this for about a week and it should heal itself. And I'm saying, oh my goodness, she's now just under 2 months. You can't live with this with a child not eating. She's going to get dehydrated. So my brother says to me, okay, so let's go to your pediatrician back in Kingston. And so we did. And when I went, she said to me, okay, this is not my forte. She does have throat ulcers. I'm sending you down to the ENT specialist, who had also treated my older daughter when she was 2 years old. So I knew him well. So he confirmed the diagnosis and gave us a prescription to take care of it and said that, within 7 days at the most, she should be okay. And I had indicated to my ex-husband and her father that we would have been coming in for this, but he was a no-show, just a no-show. So by this, I am now recognizing that there is something that is unraveling here, whether it's an abandonment of your whole family, abandoning your children, or abandoning your marriage, but something is exploding and unraveling. So I am now beginning to, forward thinking, how am I going to cope? How am I going to manage? But you're still hoping for the best, really, because you just can't believe that someone is going to abandon young children and a mother at this critical time. I'm in postpartum, and I keep asking myself, how didn't you go into postpartum depression? Anyway, I returned to the house where I was living. It was repaired, and I went back to work. I remember going to visit the house just towards the end of the repairs. And I had a wonderful elderly neighbor who could have been my mom at the time. We had a good relationship, and she went across to greet her and say hello and let her know, we were coming back. And she said to me, I saw your husband over there, and he popped over to tell me that he will not be returning. And I didn't say this to her, but in my own mind, I'm saying, oh, it's great that he told you, but he didn't tell me. Right? So much for a marriage unraveling and ending without closure, without having been told all of this. So I return. And as I have probably indicated in the introduction, there was absolutely no financial input. There was no emotional support. There was just not even an offer of help of any sort. I remember my mom had returned to be with me because I think she was thinking of this young infant needing some extra cuddles and support. And I remember my mom telling me something he said, which stuck with me all my life. Somebody could be so callous. So he had gone off with the family car. So my mother had loaned me her car temporarily. So in a conversation he was having with my mom, he said to her, and I just can't wait for you to take away the car so that her friends can laugh at her. I'm saying, oh my God, how can you want the worst for somebody who is actually the source of nurture for your kids? I was beyond shock. And then I'm beginning to say to myself, maybe it's not so much of a bad thing that, this relationship is disintegrating. Because if somebody wants to see you fall that badly, then they can't have your best of your kids. And he is the father of both. So it was a little bit of a shock adjusting to all the negativity. Now, when my mom eventually left, a policy that I've always had, and I think this has to do with the fact that I grew up in a very strong, nurturing nuclear family. And so I had a template of what family life should look like for me anyway. And I had promised myself one thing, that depriving my children of a parent was never on my agenda, because I had recognized from my own upbringing how important and impactful having both of your parents and having a relationship with both of your parents was. So, in addition to my own personal philosophy, the fact that they were young children, I allowed him free access to the household, because a child by now, she's just under 4 months, the other one is 4 years old. You do not want them being dragged in every single direction and in multiple households, because by now I have put the dots together. He was in another relationship. At what point he got into that, I'm not sure. But I realized that the emotional and physical safety of my children were absolutely important to me, and they were of paramount importance at that time, above everything else. But he became very verbally abusive, not physical, but verbally abusive. What was fortunate for me at that time, I think that I may have had a bit of a... This whole thing was having a moderating influence on my personality, because I am not the kind of person not to respond to that kind of behavior. But I kept very quiet, because I recognized that I didn't have the emotional stamina to have a back and forth, a negative back and forth with anybody. I was just trying to muster the physical strength and the emotional capacity to parent two young children. Sleepless nights, focusing on how you're going to feed them, how you're going to pay your bills. Those were my overarching... It was a focus of of who I am who I was and who I am as a parent. You know, what is in the best interest of my children? And many of us hold that for many, many years, because we have to focus on what is in their best interest. Because we only hold some of the controls. We do not hold all of them. But the ones we hold, we can certainly live our values once we establish them and have our firm priorities. And so I try to live by those values and priorities at that period of time, until the kids had their some level of physical independence, and both of them became of school age and all of that kind of issue. So that was my my first introduction to lack of co-parenting, or low to no co-parenting, even though I didn't recognize it then, because what I've learned since then is that when a relationship breaks up, gender stereotypes tell us a couple of things. One of them being that the woman has the responsibility for maintaining that relationship, and when it breaks up, it's her fault. The other issue that comes up is fear and shame will overtake us if we allow it to. They become our default emotions. And so I had to quickly recognize that and take the appropriate interventions to make sure I wasn't overwhelmed by shame or fear. I had to quickly ditch that to maintain my own ability to parent responsibly.
So I want to get back, because I love the whole co-parenting versus shared parenting. And what I want to get into is that when the difficulty with co-parenting or shared parenting is that you're talking about a fractured relationship to start with. And when you're talking about a fractured relationship, now you're talking about two people who have hurt feelings, who now have to tread and figure out how to do what's best for their kids without trying to step on either other's shoes. So for me, like, one of the first questions is, where's the responsibility lie? Because I can see both point of views. I can see the point of view from the person who has custody. Okay, and let's work with it like you don't have shared custody, like the kids stay with somebody. And I can see it from the other person's point of view. And then we can go into 50-50 also. But like I know the parent who has full custody is like, well, I'm doing everything and you're not helping out. And that person can be like, well, you're not making it easy for me to help out. You're not giving me that space to help out. You're using your side and just trying to put me down. Like and I know my ex-wife, she told me before we ever got divorced or when we were married, she said, if you leave me, if we ever get divorced, I will destroy you and I will take you for everything, you know? And like that was like, I knew, like, that's why one of the reasons why it took me so long to leave is I knew where I was treading once I left. And I knew it wasn't going to be easy. But you have all these hurt feelings, you have all these feelings, and you can even try sometimes. The other person can try sometimes, and they're just met at a door. So where does the responsibility? I mean, I know what my answer is, but I would like to hear what your answer is. Where's the responsibility to co-parent or share? Because I don't think you can share parent until you have at least co-parent. And I think there is a difference. I think there's almost, like, to me, there's almost stages. I mean, if you can't co-parent, there's no way on earth you're share parenting. If you can't even get to that level. Am I correct, or am I taking it the wrong way from your point and perspective?
All right. So here is my perspective, and I am definitely coming from the gender stereotype perspective. It has been taught to women that they are the gender of nurture. Changing the diapers, feeding the baby, dressing the kids, taking them to the doctor, that is all a part of the gender role. And I have had that with both of my co-parents, right? And so when we have lived with that kind of culture for a long time, it's not just personal issues and hurt that are determining the way we co-parent. It's also gender culture. What I have seen, which is a positive, very positive sign, in a few of the younger men, I have seen them taking on the gender roles of physical care, which was assigned to the mom. So they will bathe the baby, they will feed the baby, not breastfeed, but bottle feed. I see men actually taking their young daughters to overnight with them, taking them to the park. I see some taking them to the doctor, but I do not believe that is a large percentage. And so when we talk about co-parenting, as opposed to shared parenting, and I am, as I said, I am focusing on where we should be. Because let's face it, here's what I see. We are divorcing and breaking up at a much younger stages with our children, right? Normally people would say, I stayed for the children. Whether that was right or wrong, I'm not sure. That's not for me to respond to. It's the adjustment that we all have to make in filling the roles that make us care in totality for our children. And parenting can't be 50-50. In any relationship, we want a good relationship in any relationship, whether it's with your parents, whether it's with your siblings, whether it's with a spouse or an intimate partner and your children, or your children. Each person, once you're not living in the same household, you have to be giving 100%. If you are giving the 100% and you are being rebuffed, that is a different issue. But I remember my own experience was that, and this was said, you have people who can help you, referring to my siblings and parents, but it's our children, it's not theirs, right? The father of my third child said, a woman must take the child to school, right? That's not his role. Okay? And so, and he never made a bottle, just like my ex-husband. He never made a bottle. He never fed her. And probably more focused on what I look back now, romance over responsibility. So, yes, it has to start somewhere, but we are adults. And unless, as I've said before, that you are rebuffed, we all know based on the ages of our children what is required. So are we going to have a checklist of what our expectations are? Are you going to do the school run? Are you going to do the co-curricular activities? When the child gets sick, irrespective of what time it is, as long as you're available, would you be able to take that child to the doctor if it's necessary? Would you be able to do the babysitting until I get home from work? What about the financial aspects of it? How are we going to share that? Because I could give you, I'm the poster child for low to no co-parenting. So for every example that I can give you, the onus was on me. It was disproportionate. And I know I am not singular in that respect. And I'm not saying this applies to all women or the attitude that I got or the lack of responsibility from my exes is a reflection of all men. But there has to be a point where we actually decide what the input of each person is going to be. That's the only way it can function effectively.
Can it still, from your perspective, be considered shared parenting, even if like one of the parents is doing a larger majority of the day-to-day operations of raising a kid just based on somebody's schedule and availability?
For me, it's only shared parenting if each parent is flexible enough that there are no hard lines, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I co-parent with my daughter's dad, and I have since she was like just over a year old. And so he is a CDL driver. So his work demands just make it so that he is on the road before kids are even awake and can't take them to daycare. So my daughter is with me 90% of the time. But even our daycare chat is on a group thread where like he sees when I'm taking her to daycare, he sees when she's being picked up from daycare. He's present at the doctor's appointments if he can be based on his work schedule. She is with him on the weekends. He is single, so it's just him and her. And there's nobody that I trust more with my daughter. But I think that people would look at the arrangement that I have with him and say, just from the outside perspective, that I do 90% of her routine. I fund her existence. I buy her clothes. I do the shopping. Like I do everything for her. But even though it's disproportionate in terms of how much is actually done, there's no real hard lines. And I know if I call him and need something, he's going to be there for her.
Predictability is an important issue in the whole parenting role. Because if somebody has a job, as you say, that has irregular hours or unsocial hours, the other parent does have to pick up the slack. But where the compensation comes from is that person's ability to jump in and meet any need that the person can meet. Availability, it doesn't have to just be financial. Availability to be there when you are needed is significant without an argument. But when we often think of co-parenting as opposed to shared parenting, we think of two adults that are equally invested, equally available, and equally responsible, and that is hardly ever the case.
Well, that's part of my problem, and part of why I asked whose responsibility is it? Because of a couple things. If both people aren't putting the kids first and putting themselves first, then it is it is both of the parents' job to put the kids. It's both of their responsibilities to put the kids first. But I drive rideshare for a living. You don't know how many men I've talked about who want to have relationships with their kids who aren't allowed to. I know that like the role genders that you played, it'll be I'll do my daughter's hair and it won't be done right or good enough for my ex because she has hurt feelings, and it becomes this whole big argument. It becomes this whole thing that, oh, I don't know how to take care of my daughter. And that's what my daughter's told. Oh, your father did that to you. He don't know how to take care of you. And that's what I'm saying. It's a responsibility that we don't do this kind of stuff. And that's why I prefaced it by saying that you're dealing with two hurt people who are all coming. If the kids aren't the center point of it, and it's about what I'm owed or what I'm due, because I've also seen the guys say, I have to work two jobs because of now child support or whatever, and my baby mama or my ex wants me to have the kids where I need to sleep. I have that extra responsibility. I don't have a choice on whether I can work two jobs. I have to work two jobs because I now have to financially support them also. Where you don't have to work the two jobs, your job is to take care of them. So, and then some parent moms are like, well, no, you're not stepping up. You're not. What do you mean I'm not stepping up? I'm working an extra job because I have to give you money.
Okay, so there are some people who are naturally antagonistic because whether they are reliving hurt from the relationship or they are just in a spite mode that they're never going to give up. But there are four basic principles that we all should live by in the co-parenting relationship if we're going to have a child-centered, child-focused relationship, right? And I always bring it down to 4 must-dos. Parents must have, as far as it is possible, equal co-parenting time. And you may have to compensate during the holidays because children often go to school, depending on their ages. So it may mean that makeup time is when the dad is off on vacation or the mom is off on vacation, right? Nothing can be chiseled in stone because it has to do with it has to work around the occupation of each parent, right? The other thing is, for spite again, many people when the relationship breaks up, they go halfway around the world with the kids. They may go 200 miles, they may go 50 miles. It is never in the best interest to rip children away from distance that takes them away from either parent. So the best practice is you stay within 20 to 30 minutes from the other parents to make the commute easy, right? So that we can go back and forth and arrangements can be made and it allows each person to accommodate the other parent and the activities of the child. That is what's most important. Because if this child has grown up in a community, they already have friends, they already have their soccer, their basketball, their tennis, their music, whatever their co-curricular. Why rip them away and make their lives more unstable, right?
So the goal
And
in your mind is 50-50 parenting or shared parenting.
yes, that's where we should be working towards, so that the children, it's important. Children are learning from us, and they're not learning from what they hear, they're learning from what they see, right? So when we are living out this relationship, it is actually instructional for our kids. And they are picking up the cues of how accommodating are my parents to each other, how respectful are they to each other. When the telephone rings, what's the grimace on the face? What's the response? And that takes me to the third point. Even if we're upset and angry with each other, no bad mouthing of the parent in front of the children, because the children are 50% of each parent. So not only are you denigrating the parent, but you are signaling to that child that part of you is a no good. Right? Part of you is defective. And that is affecting the child's self-esteem over a period of time. So you are actually damaging your child at that time. And this is where I want to go finally about the 4 basics, must-dos of co-parenting, John, in relation to some of what you have raised, is, yes, many of us are still hurting, whatever the reason, right? And we are not able to control that hurt. And that is just a fact of life. So the onus is on that particular parent to get, whether it's counseling, whether it's coaching, if they're having a communication issue, go to consistent couples communication. And let me clarify that quickly. You are not going together like marriage counseling, but you really want to take the sting out of your conversations. So you have to now find a way from somebody who is trained in how to communicate in a neutral, unoffensive way. And so the hurt is there, and it keeps reliving what you would like to do and what you would really like to say, and the nasty text and all of what comes with that. But for the sake of our children, we have to get coaching on that. That's specifics of building language that is neutral.
What if you are trying to co-parent with somebody who doesn't want to co-parent, who doesn't want to go to counseling, who doesn't want to get that help, who they're the ones who are keeping the other person, and there's a lot of, I mean, I've heard a lot, and I'm not going to make this, but like, I've heard a lot of women who leave people go, I don't need the man. I don't want him in my life. I don't want him around my children's life. I've heard this in my car. I've heard this conversation. I've heard women say this. And they're like, I don't want to be around my ex. My children aren't going to be around my ex. Like, they don't want to co-parent. And you're stuck with a parent who may want to co-parent but can't, because they're getting stopped at every attempt that they try to co-parent.
So here's what I would say. That's when, unfortunately, we have to go to the courts.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. That's non-negotiable. There is no parent that is allowed to tell the other parent that they must not be in their child's life. That is off the charts. So while I would say that should be a last resort, but you can't bicker with somebody on an ongoing basis for access to your child. And I would say that the courts are now moving towards shared parenting. There is no court outside of violence, and you have to prove that, or the tender years. The courts are actually moving towards shared parenting.
They may be moving. They're not there yet, though.
Yeah,
No,
well,
they're
I
not.
mean, it's frustrating on a plethora of different accounts because I think that the court doesn't factor in all necessary information to make discernments about or judgments about co-parenting in any capacity. I mean, it goes all the way back to my daughter. My daughter's biological dad was not the direct danger. He lived with people that I feared for her safety of. And I think that a lot of men now, I mean, I have people in my life right now that are going through divorce. That their wife literally just took their kid and said, see ya in court, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't know what to do. And it's like the rug just got pulled underneath them. Their kid just got taken. Their wife just left them.
Mm-hmm.
Women initiate statistically 70% of divorces. It's actually a little bit higher than that. And
Mm-hmm.
we still
Mm-hmm.
have a whole generations of men that won't take them to court. So like, I kind of want to turn that on you, John, and not in a condescending way, but why do you think that it is that men are not taking women to court in situations like
Yeah.
this?
Okay, so when you get hit with child support right off the bat, right? And they take the kids, they hit you with child support. You've already lost usually like half of your check. Now you got to come up with money to take them to court. Now, where's the
Well,
financial? Like, no, you literally have to. There's a huge cost to it, and you're already suffering a cost. You're already working or having to work more hours, and then you're like, I got to work even more hours just to fight for my kids. It feels like
Mm-hmm.
it's set up against you.
Well, sure. But if women are the ones initiating the divorce, and then you have to go, like a lot of the times the state will make you take a class. But if you're pushing for 50-50, that usually levels the child support payments. If you have
Mm-hmm.
50-50 custody, especially because men statistically carry the child on their insurance more often than not. But also in today's society, we have working men and women households, which also lowers the cost that men end up paying out of their child support, both in favor of 50-50, because now, okay, both of you have them X amount of the time. So they just look at the gap in percentage of
Yeah.
income. But then if
Mm-hmm.
the man is carrying the child on child support, or I'm sorry, on their insurance through work, for example, that gets deducted out. And it actually doesn't end up being a lot per
Mm-hmm.
month that men end up paying. The only real exception to that rule is when the woman is unemployed. But if she's not
Mm-hmm.
disabled or unable to work in some capacity and there's 50-50, then there is no excuse for the woman to not have a job. And I think that this is where men get caught
It's
up, not to take away from your point, but to reiterate it, is that we don't know these things. But how much of the time, what percentage of the time are people allowing their fear of the unknown to control that relationship with their child? And now we're just giving favor to the parent that is inciting control of the relationship based on the fact that they know that their ex-partner isn't going to go through the hoops of figuring out how to get
Mm-hmm.
custody.
so.
Yeah. Sometimes displayed intimidation.
I just want to say also though that real quick that it's state by state has different rules, and
Mhm.
Yes.
they didn't like even though we were saying like when I was taking a child support, I got hit for more money than she did, and it wasn't they didn't care about who like shared that. They're like, who are they spending most of the time with? And even though I was saying it's 50-50, it's like she had control over the kids. I didn't have control over the kids. So even though it looked they processed it like I was like she had full custody. And it didn't matter. Like there was no like really fighting for like that. It's the the judge or whoever dictates it, and it's that shit's set. And
Right.
so and like I said, different states have different rules.
Yep.
But I felt like I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have a shot to fight for it. I didn't have a fight, you know? It didn't matter what was going on. It didn't matter anything. We even had an agreement. We even had a financial agreement, which she got her use out of it. She got a bunch of money up front, and then and said that she wasn't going to take me, and we would work out the deals. And then she took me right away to after she got the money for child support. And the agreement that I had was written, and we signed it. It didn't matter. It didn't matter.
Yeah, the state by state laws are tricky. Clover, what do you have to say to that?
Okay. Well, I'm in total agreement with what you're saying about the state by state laws, and it varies. It varies in different countries. However, um, my own experience was that I was not going to take anybody to court because As I said, I was in Jamaica, and the indignity of going to a family court. And when the divorce settlement actually came, he didn't contest the fact that I asked for full custody of my children. And so my own personal perspective was that the fathers of my children were okay to say, boy, you can do a good job. You have what it takes to take care of them, even if I was drowning financially. That was the easy cop out. But luckily for people in North America, each state has different rules, and what you end up getting depends on how far you are willing to fight. And some people just give up because they don't want the pushback, and as John said, the extra money for lawyers. But then there is legal aid, because I have known quite a few people who have gone through the legal aid route and have gotten, adequate redress. The other issue we don't talk about is, so if when you broke up, the child was a year old and the court said, okay, you were to do $1,000 a month, the child is now 15. And now the woman is afraid to carry him to court because the child is now 15. And he's not coming up front and saying, okay, I recognize that what the expenses were when he was a year old or 2 years old is not what it is. So let's work out now 15 years later. So hence my personal belief that as parents with the best interest of our children, we always have to be willing to come to the table, notwithstanding how obstreperous, as John says, his experience was with his ex and numerous other people. And we also have to gauge the volatility of each person, because as the years go on, some parents who have been degrading the other parent and trying to win over the children, which parents do it all the time, parental alienation. And, they try now to get custody as the children get older. And yes, sometimes it happens, but sometimes it doesn't happen. There's violence. And this is a part of the whole parenting space that we don't often talk about, is the level of violence that perpetrated by one parent against the other, and sometimes parents against children. They're tired of the fight. I mean, this is an area that I've personally been researching, and there's a big case, the John Mass case. I don't know if you're familiar with that, where there was I think the woman had the custody. Was it the mother who had custody? Anyway, but there was a change in the custody arrangement, and he was told to bring the children to this particular car park. I think it was in like a mall. And so the other parent went to pick up the children, and there was the mom's father came and shot the father of the children who came to collect the children and killed him. And that case is not unique. There are others that I know of, but there was another one where the mom called the father on FaceTime to say hello with this very young child, under 3, and she killed the child, right? There's another case I know of, young kid. The mom allowed him to come for visitation rights. She left him alone in the room, and what did he do? He killed the child. So we have to gauge against and constantly evaluate the people we are dealing with. And not only the people we are dealing with, but the new relationships that they get into. We have to, and that's what makes it so difficult, because you're not just dealing with one person, but you're dealing with people who have gone into new relationships. We do not know the orientation and the thinking of those people and what has been fed to them. And so it can be negative for you, the other parent, as well as your child. So it really is a very difficult space to be in. It's like you have to be constantly watching over your child, watching over the interrelationships on the other side, not just with the other parent, but the new relationships that they form that are likely to influence them, new partners.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So, what are some helpful tips or things that you can do or you can tell people that would, if they're starting the journey of like they just got separated or they just left their boyfriend girlfriend and now co-parenting is in the cards. What is some of the first key things um that you think need to be established for co-parenting or shared parenting to actually have success?
Okay, so the first thing we need to do is evaluate our own emotional pain and hurt. That's a starting point because you cannot pour from an empty cup. And if you hate the other parents, that's your problem. But the first rule that I would recommend to people is that you have to love your child more than you hate your ex.
Yeah.
That should be the defining rule of how you operate. Right? So that should be your first value that you establish. I love my child way more than I hate this man. And so begin to focus on your own self-care. And your own self-care can start from what makes me happy. Should I go out and start learning how to dance? Should I go out and make sure I have some physical activity, go walking every evening? Is it a case where I really need, it is, I'm so distraught that I actually need therapy because I am so hurt and all I can see is anger and pain and I want to punch this person out. And so we have to do a self-evaluation after we establish that I need to love my child more than I hate my ex. Because we have to build back that identity outside of the relationship, and it's extremely hard because people saw you as a unit, all right? For most of us anyway, we were probably in longer term relationships and marriages. So rebuilding that identity on your own. So personal and professional development is also an option. So the next thing you're going to want to look at is your finances. Is this person going to screw me? Am I going to be left with all of these bills? Right? And is this a person I can approach to say, let's not go to court, but here's a parenting plan. Here are the current financial expenses. And how can we break and arrange this in a way that doesn't bring any of us under? Because we both need to be ensuring that this child has a level life where we're not tearing out each other's hair and hurling insults and expletives at others. So we have to get to that. And anybody can do that and send it to the other person. We have a lot of family apps that will actually, you fill in the blanks and you email it to the other person and say, what do you think? What would you like to change? So a level of civility where we don't have to be in each other's faces, right? So that should be the go-to option before court should be the very, very last resort. And also, how much time do you want to have this child, right? And again, that will depend on the age of the child. But there are factors that are going to determine how you operate. But those are some of the major factors. And the matter of expenses is crucial because each parent has to live, and you would want to live, and hopefully the other parent to live in a way where they're not living in poverty or they're not homeless, and that your children can have everything that they need to keep them going, and they're not feeling the negative energy from each parent about one parent not cooperating and the hurling of insults, because children absorb energy. Right. They feel the energy. It's not what we say, it's what we do. They absorb it. However, even when they're younger, it's something that they can feel. So we definitely have to put the ego under our feet and focus and say, this is our child. What is in the best interest of our child? And the very last resort should be the courts. And there should not be an effort to kneecap the other parent and to try to, squeeze out every dollar from them, as John said, just to make life a living hell, because that person now is going to be, it's going to feel like life is being sucked out of them. And interacting with your children is not going to be a joy, because your children are going to feel like they are a pawn. Well, that's how it's going to appear to the other parent.
Yeah. And I think that's something you don't do just one time. Like you
No.
kind of said, like a 15-year-old's did it different than a 1-year-old, right? So I think there has to be, but I mean, if you can't ever agree the first time, you're never going to agree to multiple times. But yeah, no, this has been a great episode. I'm sure there's a lot more we could get into, but time definitely flies when you're having fun. So that's going to bring us to one of our final two segments called
Key Takeaways.
I think the starting point is that we need to do what's best for the kids. And something I always, when talking to people about co-parenting, is that your kids should come first, and it should never be what you feel about the other co-parent that matters. Like, that should be out the door. That should not play a role. And if you really believe that the other co-parent is horrible, your kid will figure that out on their own. You don't need to push them into that. If you push them into that, I try to warn parents, if all you do is badmouth the other parent, when that child grows up, and if they one day actually get to know that co-parent, which you've destroyed, and they find out they're not everything that you just made them out to be, guess who they're going to get angry at? Guess who they're going to come back to and not want a relationship because you stole a relationship from them. Don't ever do that to your kids. Don't ever. And that's the one thing that has gotten me through. It's like, yo, one day my kids are going to realize the stuff that, and it's funny because they had to go through a little bit of what I went through, and it broke my heart because I had to see them go through some of the same things that I did, and I never, as much as I wanted justification, I never wanted that, but it should always start out that is their father or their mother, and you have no right to destroy that from them. That is something that in the end they can make up their own mind on.
Yeah. And I think mine kind of piggybacks into that. Like, kids they're so forgiving, and they're also such sponges. So diminishing or tarnishing the character of any person, not just the other co-parent, but any person in a child's life, unless that person is a threat to their mental, emotional, or physical safety, makes us the bad guy. And just as a parent, being able to set up boundaries without having to explain why the boundaries are there, it's not appropriate for a child to have to take on the emotional baggage that we as adults carry. And I really want to see everybody in these co-parenting dynamics, since statistically that is becoming the normal, stop propagating their own agenda or vendetta over this other person onto their child, because it's not. And I know that some people feel that that is appropriate, but if you really get down to the core of why you're doing those things, you're doing it to be spiteful and vindictive to the other person. And the only person that it affects, very truly, is the child. And if they understood that, is it worth the consequence of your child's emotional suffering? And the answer 10 out of 10 times should be no. So it makes me very grateful for the co-parenting relationship I have with my daughter's dad because we've never once been to court. I've never once asked him for a dollar. He's never once asked me for a dollar. Like, we always just do what is best for our kiddo. And he's over at my house every holiday and we buy him gifts and he buys us and her brother that I have with my husband. Like, it's just like he's part of our family, and that's how it's supposed to be, because even though him and I don't work out, we share flesh and blood, and he is my family, and he knows that I would do anything for him. And yes, the relationship looks different, but I just wish that people would stop being so selfish with these precious little people that don't deserve this start to life. We don't need to rock their relationship. Life brings enough trauma, okay? Like, don't complicate it. It's already complicated enough. Damn. Like, good grief.
Yes, manipulating children and, just designed parental alienation is just wrong. It's just wrong.
It is.
It's
Well,
damaging.
and that brings us to you, Clover. If everybody could take just one thing away from this episode, what would your mic drop moment be? What do you want listeners to know?
What I'd want listeners to know, and I've probably said it already, is that it's more important to let your child or children know how much you love them, demonstrate it and back it up with action. Whatever happened between yourself and the dad, maybe they will come to terms with it at some point. And as John said before, in the long run, they are going to find out who the parent truly is. It may take a long time, but focus on having a parent-child-centered relationship.
Love it.
Yeah, I love it too. And just remember, I remember, like, what is the old saying? You attract more flies with honey than something else, right? Isn't it something like that?
Then vinegar.
Vinegar, yeah.
Then vinegar.
And if your co-parent is not doing exactly what you want, pushing them away, combating them is going to make that even tougher. Like, trying to work with them, trying to figure out a way, trying to be nice, trying to be the better person if you have to be. That's going to get them to move more your way than to yell, scream at them, make them feel like crap. That's just going to push them away even more, and they're not going to want to do it even more. So if you're struggling, maybe extend an olive branch. Maybe try to say, okay, I see you're struggling with this. How can we work it? How can we compromise? How can I help you? Because, you should be around your child, And I just think that we get stuck in our own works. And sometimes it's not just us. Sometimes it's the people around us saying, oh, he's not doing what he needs to do. Like, don't listen to other people. Do not listen to other people. They weren't part of your relationship when you were together. They're not part of your relationship when you're apart. So stop allowing your friends and your family to dictate what co-parenting looks like. Because I think that there's a whole nother episode in that.
Absolutely.
And of course, for our viewers and listeners, please take a second and just let us know what your key takeaway from the episode is. We love hearing them and appreciate that. And that's going to bring us to our final five.
The final five.
And the first question is, who was your hero and why?
Well, I have three heroines. One is my mom. One is my very first science teacher in high school, and the other was my high school principal. And what do they all have in common? Courage, confidence. And I think I appropriated that from them, and I got that from my mother. My science teacher, she was the essence of courage and confidence. And my headmistress in high school, my second headmistress, she instilled that in me. I believe in you. And I felt that from the day I was interviewed for entry until the day I left. So I have 3 heroines.
Very nice. Second question for you is going to be, if co-parenting was a sport, what position would you play?
Wow.
You can pick any sport to compare it to. I don't care.
Oh boy, I'm not sure which sport because I'm not a sports person, but I would want to be the one scoring the goals. I'd want to make sure that we're all on the winning team, right? Because diminishing any one of the group diminishes all, and that's
Make sure the
why
ref, right, John? We can just call her the ref.
I speak up so boldly because of the lack of support I got in co-parenting. Because it's okay to say to somebody, you can do it all, but that means you are relinquishing your own responsibility to be the best parent that you can be. And so you're not really a member of a winning team. You're trying to drag the team down.
Love it. What is one book, one quote, one verse, one saying, or one song that you either live by, has made the tremendous impact on you, or has changed how you perceive something?
I think I got this from Les Brown in the 1990s, right? So, and I think I've literally lived by it because it was such a striking quotation. I think it was a presentation that I heard him in. It's better to be prepared for an opportunity and not have one than have an opportunity and not be prepared. And that spoke to my ability for my own personal and professional development. And I've lived by it, and it has taken me to higher education. It has taken me across the world. And that is how I was able to actually uplift my children and create a vision of what I wanted for them. Because in the end, I said to myself, I have 3 daughters, and the fathers that they have are not the husbands that I would like them to choose. So if they were ever faced with my situation, I would want them to be fully armed with an international education. And so I worked on my own so that I could position myself to give that to them. And I was fortunate to be able to do
That's
it.
awesome. Very cool. Next question for you is going to be, if you could send one anonymous text to everyone in the world who co-parents, what would the message be?
You need to love your children unconditionally and let them know it.
A good one.
Yeah.
Every baby deserves to know that.
Yes.
It matters. It does matter to your children that they know
Yes, it
that they're
does.
loved.
Yes. And what is, or who is, sorry, one person, living or dead, who you would love to sit down and have a conversation and a cup of coffee with?
Wow. Barack Obama. Being the first in anything is a challenge, right? And being the first, America is a place of immense racial strife, let's put it that way. Wasn't always like that, but it has gotten more so because we have given voices to the underbelly of, the negative underbelly of the social fabric. And so the amount of hate and pushback based on your race, how did you manage to maintain the level of confidence and to keep going forward for 8 years?
That would be an interesting conversation.
Yes, that would.
Clover, thank you for being with us today. For listeners who want to connect with you and follow the work that you do, where can they find you?
They can find me on Facebook. They can find me on YouTube, also on Instagram.
Okay, beautiful. Well, we will drop your handles below so that people can see that in your podcast link.
Yes, and again, one of the reasons why I think this episode was really cool was because, unfortunately, co-parenting and co-parenting with multiple partners is becoming more of a norm, and that's a sad
More than norm.
that's a sad assessment of the world today, but it also means that we need to be better prepared for it. And
Yes. It's a new model of
yeah,
parenting. That's the way
it
it's
would be
trending.
nice if we reverse that, but
Absolutely.
for those of us who have to deal with that, and I think it was cool to have you because you've had that multiple, co-parents, and so you were able to speak with authority on that. So remember, when we take the time to hear someone's story, it gives us opportunity to find common ground. Clover, thank you again for sharing your story and for being here with us today, and for being our guest. For Sydney and myself, it has been our pleasure to be your host, and you have been listening to the Common Ground Podcast. God bless and good night.
And that's it for today's episode of the Common Ground Podcast. We hope you're leaving with a little more perspective, a little more purpose, and a whole lot more inspiration.
So thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. Thank you to our special guest.
If today's conversation moved you, encouraged you, or challenged you in any way, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, rate it, leave us a review. Your support helps us reach more people who need to find their own common ground.
So for John Fletcher and Sydney Curtin,
we'll see you right here next week, same time, same place on the Common Ground Podcast.